Hi there, Malcolm here with my 197th Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you my July wrap-up. No August TBR, you say? Well, I can tell you that in the numbers game, I have done 32 titles, totaling 4,931 pages, putting me 6,956 pages up on the previous year, and also I've done 30.12 hours of Audible. So with 32 titles, I figured that was plenty enough to get through without having to add a TBR on the end of the video. Yeah, so with 32 titles, that's a heck of a lot. So let's get cracking. Just to explain why I managed 32 titles, we went on holiday to Brittany in France, which was very nice for a couple of weeks, where we just basically sat around and read and played games. I might actually do a video on the games we played. That might be quite good, but so look out for that. So first up, I finished listening to The Curse of the Burdens by John Wyndham on Audible. I've been going through the John Wyndham selection because it's free, happily playing my way through this amazing author's backlog of work. And this one I didn't know anything about. And effectively, this follows, well, it starts off following two grown-up brothers of the Burden family, one of whom has just inherited a house from their recently deceased uncle, only for himself to come under mishap, leaving the surviving brother to wonder if there is really a curse. Bit of a strange one, this one. I did enjoy it, but I did wonder where it was going for a lot of it, and their resolution was a bit weird. And this falls more under the thriller than any science fiction thing. There's no aliens or robots or technology or time travel or anything like that. It's just basically a pretty standard bunch of things that happen. Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. Worth listening to, possibly worth buying. And then back to back, I read these two books from the Worlds of Aldebaran series, Return to Aldebaran, books 1, 2 and 3. And this is like the 5th or 6th arc of the series, which I haven't read any of the previous stuff. Basically, they follow a bunch of people who go out to the planet of Aldebaran to settle it, and they meet some weird and wacky creatures. And then there's calls to go to some other planets, and this is set a little bit later on, once Aldebaran's been properly settled, and there's now political infighting. And I just really enjoyed the tale that they told. The main crux of this storyline is that there's this mysterious cube that has been discovered in Aldebaran, which, after a bit of investigation, it turns out to be some sort of portal to another place. Never really specifies when or where, but there's a outpost of people in a increasingly threatening situation, and while investigating this, political upheaval back on Aldebaran itself means the cube is no longer usable for those people who've trapped on the other side of it. So there's lots of levels of intrigue and infighting and politicking. Yeah, really good. These I borrowed from the library, but if I were to see them, I would buy them. I then listened to Chucky by John Wyndham. This was a reread. I'd previously had this one out of the library and read it with my eyeballs, but this time I listened to it with my earballs. And Chucky is about a young lad who gets into deep arguments with this imaginary Chucky. However, it turns out that Chucky is not imaginary, but an alien intelligence from somewhere who's being curious about planet Earth and wanting to find out more. And this young boy just happens to be a convenient conduit with which to communicate, but with a slight issue with the language barrier, and obviously, and also the fact that this young boy is still learning his own vocabulary, and so some ideas were quite difficult to get across. So this was quite a complex story, really, in terms of dealing with the child's psychology, parenting a child who has a invisible friend. We have an account of his younger sister who also had an invisible friend. This one was a real imaginary friend, as it were. Yeah, really enjoyed this one. Booktastic. And then I read Sweet Tooth, books 3 and 4, Animal Army and Endangered Species. This is a post-apocalyptic story set in a world where there's a disease which is wiping out humanity, and children are born with some weird human-animal hybridization, and Sweet Tooth happens to be part deer. As these children are naturally immune to this disease, and as such are generally experimented on to find out what it is about them that makes them immune, and what is this disease. So we go further down the rabbit hole as the surviving humans and hybrids from the first two issues of the series continue to travel to Alaska, where it is believed there are answers. And of course, there's always things along the way to waylay you and distract you. So yeah, really good, gritty, very gritty, quite violent, a really intriguing universe. I've watched the first episode on, I believe it's on Netflix. Seems okay. Yeah, nice continuation of the story, worth buying. So that's what I managed to do before we went away. So onto my holiday reading. Now, my TBR video, I mentioned I wanted to read all 11 of the Young Jedi Knight books by Kevin J. Anderson and Rebecca Mester that I had, knowing that I was missing a few. Now, I did this under the mistaken understanding that each book was its own episodic adventure. How wrong I was. Turns out that books 1 to 6, which I do have, are all one continuous arc, with each book having its own particular flavour, but they're one continuous arc. And then the next few are a different arc, and I don't have the first 2 of that series, so I was only able to read the first 6 of the 11 I took, so I was missing some critical books there. Anyway, so Heirs of the Force was the first one, and in this series we have a, I think about 14, 15-year-old Jason and Jaina, the twins of Han Solo and Leia Organa, who are now on Yavin 4 with Uncle Luke Skywalker at his Jedi Academy, learning to be Jedi. And they team up with a couple of friends, Tenel Ka, warrior princess, half of the Hapes cluster and half of Dathomir. Or the proper version of Dathomir, not the Clone Wars version. And they're soon joined by Lowbacker, or Loey, a nephew of Chewbacca, who has Force abilities and is the first Wookiee to wield a lightsaber, really. And these 4 friends, they discover a crashed TIE fighter in the jungle, and unfortunately the pilot is still alive and loyal to the not quite entirely defunct Empire. I was really impressed with this, a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Yes, it's targeted for slightly younger readers, but certainly felt a lot more Star Wars than anything that Disney has put out. Worth reading and worth buying. And after that I then read The Simpsons Jam-Packed Jamboree, a compilation of 6 more of the comics. In previous videos I've gone through each individual one, but with 32 books to go through, that's too much effort. So yeah, loads of great stuff in here, lots of funny things. Not as much bonus content. There are, I think every story has a bonus story or 2 at the end of them, but worth buying. Good stuff. And then after that I then read Young Jedi Knight's Shadow Academy. On a little outing with Lando Calrissian, the 4 friends are kidnapped by Brachis, the bad guy from the New Rebellion, who's basically trying to build the Empire's antithesis to Luke's Jedi Academy, leading to an escape and rescue attempt. Really exciting, worth buying. And then after that I then read The Simpsons Beach Blanket Bongo. 6 more stories, booktastic. And after that I then read Stowaway to Mars by John Wyndham, another one I didn't know anything about. And this was a bit of a disappointment to me. I've been previously really impressed with how John Wyndham has written his female characters. Certainly from that golden age of science fiction, female characters are very one-dimensional. They're there to be rescued or there to be pathetic, whereas John Wyndham's female characters are generally really strong characters. You know, they haven't earned their right to be in the story. They are in the story. You know, they're there doing what they're supposed to do and deal with it, sort of thing. Whereas the female character that we have in this one is a much poorer representation of the female character in science fiction. The story is about a bit of a git, really, who likes pushing things to the next level and basically takes up the bet of getting a ship to Mars before anyone else can, despite his wife's plea to not do so. And him and a bunch of his mates lift off, and off they go eventually. A long build up to get to this point. And they discover that a young woman has stowed away on board. Now, immediate thought was a young, attractive lady stowing away on a ship bound for Mars. Quite a lengthy voyage with a bunch of sex-starved men. Not the most intelligent thing to have kicked off with. And we don't really go there, but we kind of sort of almost do. I we finally get to Mars and things happen. And I don't know, I think it was a bit too metaphysical for its own good. A lot of thought exercises about certain things which by now we've already sussed. We know what Mars is like, we know what space travel's like, we know this, that and the other. And of course a lot of the suppositions that John Wyndham was positing are now defunct or answered, really. And so yeah, it took a long time to get anywhere and wasn't very satisfactory when it did. And of course after they get back, the girl's fate is appalling, really. Is it worth reading? I'm not sure. I say it probably is for completeness sake. You know, it's like a John Wyndham book you've not read. Well, I'll read it then. And, you know, it's interesting finding out ideas from the period about what things were going to be like. But if you've not read John Wyndham, then don't start with Stowaway to Mars. Let's put it like that. It wasn't awful, but just the completionist in me would say it's worth reading. And after that, I then read the Lost Ones, having escaped the Shadow Academy. Oh, sorry, spoilers. Kind of obvious, really. Brachus turns to enlisting the child gangs of Coruscant, having learned that kidnapping the children of the Chancellor of the New Republic was too high profile, whereas if you nick a bunch of kids no one cares about, no one's going to care. A really interesting socio-economic view on status and class, and the views that people have towards the other based on various prejudices that they have, or blind sides that they have. Very clever, worth buying. And after that I then read Simpsons Comics Royale. Now this is a slightly different edition to the other ones, rather than a collection of comics. This one has the feel of being constructed as a graphic novel. We have letters from Matt Groening about his childhood and wanting to become an illustrator, wanting to become a cartoonist, the creation of Bart Simpson, advice to people wanting to start drawing cartoons, as well as some great stories featuring the likes of Radioactive Man, Bartman, Krusty the Clown, and finishing with a brilliant Alice in Wonderland story with Elisa, which was very clever. Booktastic. Very impressed with this one. And after that I then read Lightsabers. Finally Luke feels that the kids are probably ready to start wielding lightsabers. It's more of the threat from the Shadow Academy having increased their numbers with the Lost Ones. So there's a necessity. So we follow the four friends as they construct their lightsabers, only for disaster to strike. Now, having read the sort of complete chronology of the expanded universe, I know various things are going to happen, and I kind of thought this is when the thing happens, and indeed the thing happens in this one. I was impressed with how it was handled, particularly the aftermath and the life adjustments. Very, very strong story, worth buying. And after that, I then read The Simpsons, Dollars to Donuts, 6 more tales with extra bonus stuff, more great stuff, worth buying. And after that, I then read Darkest Night, where we travel to Kashyyyk, where Lowbacker's younger sister is going through the dangerous rite of passage that he did, and he confesses that he was particularly stupid and reckless with his, and fears that his sister's going to be not as fortunate as he was. However, if that happens to coincide with the Dark Academy visiting Kashyyyk to nick some stuff, so this rite of passage is going to be a little bit more complex than first believed. Another great story, and does a really good job of flushing out Chewbacca and Lowbacker, these otherwise, from our point of view, non-vocal characters, although when they speak to each other we do get it translated what they're saying, which is very nice. And back in Heirs of the Force, Lowbacker is given a translator droid programmed by C-3PO, and so just as Prissy, that means that we always know what Lowbacker is saying, apart from when it gets lost and stuff. So yeah, a really, really good way of increasing the personification of these walking carpets. Worth buying. And after that, I then read Marvel Select Wolverine Tales of Weapon X. This is more of a short story collection, but all tied together, where Professor Xavier and Logan go into therapy session, really, where Professor X tries to unblock Wolverine's mind in order to find out who he is, where he's come from, what is his mysterious past. And for some reason we also have a Deadpool story in amongst all that, which was just hilarious, as one would expect. Each tale had a different set of illustrators and authors, and so naturally had a different feel throughout, but a really strong addition to the collection, worth buying. And after that I then read the final book of the first arc of For the Young Jedi Knights, and that is Jedi Under Siege. Brachus and his Dark Jedi feel like they're ready to take on Luke Skywalker's temple, particularly as they've been joined by the Emperor, who seems to be back again. And it kicks off really from the first few pages, and it's quite an intense read. I really enjoyed it. Flew through this one, really exciting, and really gives our young Jedi a chance to prove themselves to themselves, not to anybody else. Yeah, very, very satisfying conclusion to a very surprisingly good arc. I say, I knew these were written for younger children. I expected it to be episodic. And yeah, they are a little bit, but they are more a continuation. All 6 books are one story. Just sort of broken up by 6 main chapters, really. I got a lot more than I bargained for, so really impressed. Worth buying. And after that, I then read, or I should say, finished reading Alien Clay by Adrian Tchaikovsky to my wife. And this is a standalone story following a guy who's been arrested on Earth for sedition, basically, against the tyrannical mandate, and is sent out to this planet called the Kiln to serve his remaining days helping the science team uncover these alien ruins and trying to work out who built them and where did they go. Told from his point of view, he's an extremely likeable character, witty, sardonic, cynical, as he adjusts to his new lot in life and slowly comes to the realisation of just what this planet is and how it works. Really great stuff. Can't recommend this one enough. Adrian's fast becoming one of our favourite authors. Booktastic. The ending is one of those endings, you either hate it or love it. We quite enjoyed it. It worked really well. Yeah, certainly doesn't take you in directions you expect it. And after that, I then read Star Wars Vector Prime by R.A. Salvatore, book 1 of the New Jedi Order series. Having been reading the Star Wars books chronologically from Dawn of the Jedi, it's taken me a long time to get here. Finally got here. And this is the book where something particularly tragic happens. And basically this is the first attempt of the Yuzhang Vong, an extra-galactic race of warrior beings, in their attempt to invade a certain galaxy a long time ago, far, far away. And this hits hard. There are already agents in place ensuring their success. The fact that there's like 20 books in this series, you know that our heroes are going to get hit hard in this invasion. And of course there's a lot going on. Politically, the New Republic is still in its teething stages. There are planets that are not happy with how things are going even before the Yuzhang Vong agents start stirring things up, but they're certainly not helping. And the fact that the thorn in everyone's side, Borsk failure, the both as a self-interested twit is now the Chancellor of the New Republic. You know things aren't going to go well when they go to him for help. Really, really good. Really enjoyed most of this. I'll say something terrible happens in here. Even knowing it was coming, it was still hard when it happened. Now we're talking significant character death. Really, really good. Looking forward to pressing on with the series. Booktastic. And after that, I then read Game Over Blork Raider. One thing that France do so well are books. Their supermarkets have a fantastic book aisle. Their newsagents has a fantastic book section. And their bookshops are crammed full of amazing books, including these nice hardcover graphic novels. They did graphic novels like nobody else, and so I had to pick up some. Last year I picked up a couple of Game Overs, really enjoyed them, so I had to get a few more, and I was fortunate to pick up book 1 of the series. And these are fun little series of gags where the little barbarian, a computer game character, tries to get to the exit by some unseen player, and each and every time he comes a cropper by some unexpected and quite often gruesome manner. The Blorks are the various enemies he has to fight, and due to the fact there's so few words in it for a non-French speaking person, this was really easy to read. However, being book 1 is a little bit introductory in that we do have certain sections at the beginning, middle and end, featuring the accompanying series Kid Paddle and his friends. So I did need Google Translate to read those bits. But yeah, really enjoyed this. Some very funny gags in this. Worth buying. And because it's the first one, this actually was on a special offer, so it didn't cost too much either. And after that I then read No Problemo, which is book 2. I had to pay full whack for this one. No need for Google Translate in this one. Literally page after page of ridiculous gags and gruesome endings. Brilliant stuff, worth buying. And also, number 13, Toxic Affair. Yeah, the fun covers of these are really fun. More of the same, worth buying. And after that, I read Doctor Who Paradox Lost by George Mann. I thought this was going to be a type of Angels style enemy, but no, not really. Basically, someone in the future attempts to time travel for the first time and opens up a rent in reality through which these creatures come through the squall, and they feed on psychic energy, and lots of death happens. And of course Dr. Rory and Amy turn up in the future to find a mystery thing, and then travel in the past to find out where it came from. So yeah, some interesting timey-wimey wibbly-wobbly stuff. A horde of monstrous killy things which need stopping. Yeah, really good adventure. Felt like one of the TV episodes. Worth buying. Good entry in the series. It's nice having two parallel storylines where Amy and Rory are left in the future trying to track down the inventor of the time machine, and the Doctor goes back in time and meets up with a random detective and team up to try and solve things from their end. So it's a nice sort of a parallel run story. And after that I then read The Wilt Alternative by Tom Sharp. This was a reread, and in this one Wilt's wife rents out the attic room to a lodger, who it turns out happens to be the mastermind behind a international group of terrorists. And of course, misunderstandings and mishaps and complications ensue in this wonderful, hilarious farce as things go from bad to worse, with the unfortunate Wilt caught in the middle of it all. It just goes to show that anything planned will go wrong because there's generally people involved, and people can't help but be people. Brilliant stuff, worth buying. And after that, I then read The Qubit Zirconium, which is a Keyforge novel by M. Darusha Wem. Keyforge is a card game created by Andrew Garfield, where each pack of cards you buy is a unique deck, and you play one unique deck against another unique deck to try and do a thing, and the one who does the thing the best and the most is the winner. And they feature a number of races with certain characters who all exist within a place called the Crucible, which is a planet that exists for reasons that we're not fully understanding. And upon this planet, we meet these two, Wibble and Plims. One's a ethereal blob creature, and another one is a cyborg thing. And they're detectives, and they're investigating a stolen the Qubit Zirconium, and they then travel around the world that they're in, this Crucible, following leads and trying to find out who stole it and why. And this felt a lot like Zootopia in a lot of ways, with all these different environments and beings all sort of coexisting in this one place, but everywhere's got their own sort of habitat. And it's like a nice little journey across this place, seeing what everything is. And this is the first board game tie-in book I've ever read, and to be honest, you don't need to know anything about the game itself to enjoy this. It's a straight up detective novel, just with weird creatures and wacky locations. Worth buying. And after that we then finished listening to Going Postal by Toe Pratchett. This is a Discworld novel, and the one that introduces Moist von Lipwig. There is a Sky movie version that was done. It's not bad, it's quite good. Not as good as the book, obviously, but this was a reread, or the first time I listened to it, and I really enjoyed this version. And basically on the disc, in its most important city, Ankh-Morpork, a master scam artist is hanged. After his apparent death, he is given a job by the patrician of the city to be the new Grand Postmaster to get the defunct post office up and running back to its former glory. So, and our reluctant hero ends up having to do this thing. There's another communication systems already in place called the Clacks, which through a series of semaphores from tower to tower are able to effectively act as emails or text messages back and forth across the disk. But things keep going wrong with them, mechanical faults, mechanical failures, and a bunch of corrupt businessmen have pretty much taken over the company and are running it into the ground for profit. So there's a lot of things that economics, business, corporate takeovers, as well as the various intricacies of people and how they view other people. Absolutely fantastic. Enjoyed reading it first time, enjoyed listening to it the second time. Certainly if you're curious about getting into the Discworld series, it's not a bad jumping on point. As I say, there's a very good movie you can watch first just to help you get into the characters and the world. Yeah, fantastic. And we listened to this on the 8-hour car journey going from home to France and back again, and that really helped pass the time. It didn't feel nearly as long with this wonderful story unfolding. And after that, I then finally finished my book of the month, which was Space Worlds, Stories of Life in the Void. This is a short story collection featuring some classic stories written from 1940 to 1967 about space travel and being in space, whether it's a space station or trying to get stuff off the ground, or generation ships, sending big ships out full of people to distant stars knowing that their children's children will be the ones to get there. A really good collection. Also all written in the early days of space travel and the understandings of space. You know, I hadn't even got to the moon at this point, but certainly there's a lot of very well thought out concepts and ideas here, many of which still hold true today. And as the first of the science fiction classics books that I've read, I do have another one. Yeah, really enjoyed it, worth buying. And after that, I then read Le Grimoire Gluten, book 1 of Van Franken, a fun fantasy book about a kitchen boy who wants to learn to read, looking at the wrong book when left on his own and being infected by it. full of nice dynamic artwork, lots going on, lots of Google Translate needed for this one. And unlike many of their graphic novel series, which seem to be dozens and dozens of editions, there's only 3 in this series. So if I do want to find out more, that should be a less hit in the money pocket than some of the other series. Yeah, really enjoyed it. The font style of the text was quite crisp, and so the Google Translate was able to pick it up. I found with some of the other books I've tried doing this on, the dot over the I is more of a line, and so Google Translate thinks that's a T. Recommend this one. Really enjoyed it. Worth buying. And after that I then read Les Dinosaures, Le Bande Dessinée, book 5. I picked this up last year and I've been sort of reading it on and off. And this is beautifully illustrated, introducing certain dinosaurs, and you get all the facts about each dinosaur that they introduce. Done it in a fun comic style way. So some gag, some mishap that happens, some aspects about the dinosaurs' physiology to make fun of. And at the end there is some articles on paleontology and recent discoveries and all of that. So a must for dinosaur lovers and people who enjoy making fun out of dinosaurs as well. And due to the nature that it wasn't a problem reading book 5 first, there's no particular reading order for these. Same with the game overs. Yeah, really enjoyed it. However, the font style, I don't know if you can see that, is such where those eyes do have a more of a line than a dot over the top of them, and so Google Translate really struggled reading some of the words. But yeah, I was able to get context or had to manually type in what I was reading. Am I learning French by doing it? No, not really. So there we go, 32 books there. And okay, quite a lot of them were skinny ones, but it's still nearly 5,000 pages in total. You know, it all does add up. And that's not counting the audibles. So I had a really great month, enjoyed everything I read for the most part. I hope you enjoyed that, lots of books thrown at you. Have you discovered that France has a fantastic array of books that we don't seem to get over in England? And I haven't even seen in America actually. I've been to Barnes & Noble's over there, very nice bookshop, but not a patch on what France do. France know how to do their books. And they're gorgeous as well. My wife was just enjoying the various very pretty books there. So what's your preferred method of reading books written in a foreign language? And do you decry the lack of reading over here? You know, you go to Tesco's, the bookshelves there are generally James Patterson and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Nothing wrong with them necessarily, it's just that, you know, you go to any supermarket in the country, James Patterson, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Alright, thoughts below, comments, likes, dislikes, as usual, if you have nothing nicer to say. And as usual, if you have nothing nice to say, then please keep to yourself. Thank you, and until next time, see you later.